Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cine Bijou Podcast. As you can see, the lights are dimming, the curtain is pulled back, and we're thrilled to pick up Season 2 where we left off. From here on out, we'll be seeing you at least once a month with fresh episodes exploring the world of independent film. To keep up to date with latest episodes, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you love what we're doing, the best way to help us grow is to subscribe, like, and share the show with your fellow cinephiles. We also want to hear from you, so please leave a comment on our latest episode and join the conversation. Finally, if you'd like to help keep the projector running, consider supporting us over on Patreon for exclusive rewards. Now, let's get into this month's feature. What got you into filmmaking, why you chose that as a profession, as a passion, and who were your inspirations and influences as a filmmaker?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rohan. My name is Guy Trevellyan. I am living in London. I kind of started in film from a very young age. I grew up just south of London and near a very famous film location called the Bourne Woods, which is where you'll probably remember the first battle scene of Gladiator is where that was. So we went to trips there when I was a kid with my parents, and then after school we would ride our bikes into the woods and watch all the amazing sets and filming that was happening. So I was exposed to cinema from a very young age, but I studied history at university. And then, after I finished uni, I really realized I wanted to work in film, but I didn't know anyone. So that's where I kind of went to the Met Film School, banging on their door for some experience and some help. And I ended up doing a master's with them, which kind of just opened the door to meeting like-minded people like me who don't necessarily have a connection to the industry, but really want to find out, learn more, learn the basics and go from there. So that was where the whole journey started, which is nearly 10 years ago now. And then after that, I went straight into the industry working as an assistant director. And then this is my kind of debut. I mean, in terms of inspirations, do you mean like people in terms of directors or like things like that, or?
Yeah, in terms of directors, anyone in film who's particularly inspired you, especially if they were auteurs and told a particular story. Because I mean, the story we're going to be talking about in a minute with plastic surgery is quite, it's a dark subject because it's a very real
Yeah.
subject, and
Yeah, yeah.
also the way you present it is both satirical and shocking.
Mm.
So it's just
Yeah.
kind of just judging from that alone, I'm curious as to who your influences are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cronenberg's style of body horror and that kind of stuff obviously plays a part. But I mean, for me, my main inspirations probably comes from Denis Villeneuve, the darkness of his films. He did a short film called The Next Floor, which not many people know about, but it's a beautiful film. And it's all about how Mother Nature can't keep up with the rate that we're consuming the natural world. So it's a brilliant short and it's a metaphorical short. And it just made me realize that what I wanted to do was possible. And so he was a big influence. Wes Anderson was another big influence. Just in terms of the scripts, the dialogue, the visuals, the detail that he would go into. I ended up luckily working for him for a long time, and I was able to get a good insight into his process of filmmaking, with the animatic they make, the storyboard, and certainly the directing style. I took most of my inspiration from Wes for that. How he interacts with cast members, how everything is prepped, how everything is organized, is really important. And prep is probably the most important part of filmmaking, even more so some would say than production itself. So I think Wes taught me that and taught me a lot of things from that. And then I mean all the usual greats really that I used to grow up watching, Spielberg to Scorsese. In terms of horror, I started to look a lot at Ari Aster's work, and who's just absolutely phenomenal in the kind of horror scene at the moment. But even taking quite a lot of inspiration really from the brothers, the Raka Raka brothers, who did the Talk to Me and the Bring Her Back as well. And I mean Zach Kreger, I mean just like big horror names. And then Greta Gerwig, who I work with, like, very briefly on Barbie. She, her directing style and how she works with cast and how she sits under the camera and watches their physical performance. She doesn't look at a monitor. So it's a very close connection she has with the cast while they're performing. She's right there with them. So those are probably my biggest inspirations. Yeah.
Well, you've been very sort of fortunate to have a role whereby you get to work closely with these people and who've influenced you and inspired you, but you've
Yeah.
got to learn from them as well and feed that stuff their what they've
Mm.
taught you into your own work. So when did you decide to go out on your own as a director? Is this your first film or
Plastic Surgery
plastic
was my
surgery?
first film. That's my
Okay.
first film. I kind of made the decision during COVID, actually, because COVID was that period of time where everyone was making a change on how they were going to operate in the film industry. And I've been working as an AD, and I love assistant directing, and I continue doing it to today. I still love assistant directing, anything from short films to high-end TV to feature films. Um, but I made the jump to try writing. I love writing. I love coming up with stories, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself a writer. Is a weird thing still for me to say, because I come up. I love coming up with ideas. I love coming up with stories, but part of my dyslexia, my brain, how it works is I very much like to write very descriptively and very visually. So I kind of gave it a go during COVID and wrote the first draft of Plastic Surgery, then shelved it for many years, while I started working more in the AD industry and working as assistant director and really building up that credits and stepping up and stepping up. And then I think it wasn't until the writers' strike, that I then was like, oh, I actually have a window here to make the film. And I just thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never try it. And I, got a casting director on board, got our producer Sophie Stacey on board, who I AD'd. She was the producer on A Matter of Minutes, and she works with Slick Films, which is very big up in the short film world. And she really helped me, into that short film area, and supported me to make this short. And then we went for it. We, wrote the script, rewrote the script again, went back at it. We managed to get a casting director on board, got Anna Popplewell on board. And when she came on board, that's when everything changed, because she revealed that she would be 6, 7 months pregnant during filming. So I
Oh, okay.
based
Yes.
on
Yeah.
rewrote the role based on the fact that she was going to be pregnant. So she said that to me in the call with her. I didn't know that prior. So I rewrote the script for her, basically. Which I was very happy to do, because it added so much to the character. It changed the whole story. It made it a character narrative and character driven story, which allows us in the end to just be a lot closer, and emotionally connect to her. And she
Mhm.
represents Mother Nature in the film. So, that's kind of how it all worked.
Okay, well, let's talk about plastic surgery then. Um, so I saw this film, as I said to you, at HollyShorts.
Mm.
It was, I believe it was in the science fiction, horror,
Yeah.
fantasy classification of screening. And what made it so impactful is that I had no idea what to expect going in. There was a brief premise on all the guidance, on all the
Mm.
programs, although I don't think people read those. They just go in and like to be surprised.
Yeah.
And boy,
Yeah.
were we surprised, because you really took everyone there on a very, very dark journey. So the film's called Plastic Surgery, as I mentioned, and it is about the last night of Terror, who is a doctor working in the what the Americans call the ER, we call A&E, dealing with
Mm.
all these cases coming in. And it does turn into a bit of a horror fest, but there's a message behind this film, isn't there, about
Mm.
microplastics, about waste. So, where did you get the idea to fuse thriller with body horror and a very, very important social message?
Thank you, Ramon. Great question. Essentially, my sister used to work for the Ocean Agency, which is a not-for-profit, a brilliant organization which looks at the effects of global warming and climate change on coral reefs around the world. And when she was working for them, it kind of unlocked an access for me to kind of see really the harm that we put on marine life around the world, just through our toxic waste, our presence, our pollution, the increasing temperature globally, how that's affecting marine life, the waste that's constantly going into the ocean. And so I started looking at plastic pollution. And after watching Denis Villeneuve's next short film, The Next Floor, I realized I wanted to kind of do a metaphor film. I wanted to look at that. How would that look? So I came up with this idea of a team of doctors that were dealing with patients that had plastic physically coming out of their body. And that came about from purely researching a lot of research into plastic pollution. And the biggest thing that came up was its effect on our health and the amount of research that has been undertaken by some of the biggest charities in the world, the British Heart Foundation, one of the biggest, which did a study on microplastics in the plaques around our heart and our arteries, which increase our chance of heart disease and blood clotting. Lots of different things like that, loads of different charities looking at Victorian University's study of microplastics in the body and how it could have effects of our affect our cells, our sperm count, our birth defect rate, our, so many different variables. And it's still something that we really don't fully understand just how bad this is going to affect us going way into the future now. Which is a very scary premise. And, there's some outrageous facts out there about how much plastic we consume and how much goes through our body. And, one study even suggests that a credit card amount of plastic passes through our brain every week, which is quite a substantial amount. And because, especially if you live in a city like I do, you drink water, if it's not filtered, there's microplastics in your water, there's microplastics in the food, there's microplastics in the air, there's microplastics in the clothes you wear, the synthetics. But even in the countryside, you can't escape it. It's still in the food supply, it's around our food packaging in supermarkets. It's still within the water supply. If you live a predominantly fish-based diet or seafood diet, lots of these quite scary research that we did. So that's where the story was really inspired by. And that's where I wrote the first draft. And obviously it was during COVID, so I must have had this kind of idea of disease on my mind and very much the films like Contagion spring to mind, which really enlightened me, and it was scary to the world to see how similar what happened during COVID was in Contagion.
Mhm.
The only difference, they said the exact same language, the only difference was the timescale, but the language was
Mhm.
exactly the same used,
Yeah.
which was pretty scary. So yeah, that was kind of where the idea came from.
Okay, so it's not only inspired, but it's informed your work. And it's interesting that this came about during COVID, and
Mm,
it bears some relation to COVID in terms of its spread and impact on us. I guess also it's being treated like COVID in that there's quite a lot of people who aren't taking it very seriously.
yeah.
They're not seeing this as an immediate threat like with
Mm.
COVID. I mean, okay, we've come through that. So, is this why you chose particularly, well, horror in general, but particularly body horror with a bit of satire to deliver the message that if people aren't going to listen to the facts and to the experts, then we're going to use art
Yeah.
to get the
Yeah,
message across?
absolutely. Absolutely. Part of the idea was, a lot of the plastic pollution crisis and around the world is very hard to connect to people that might not have ever seen the sea, been to the sea, lived by the sea, and the only connection to it really is what you read online. So how do you really, you know, really strike a chord globally with people? And often, sadly, just the fact that we're human, we tend to listen more when our own health comes under threat. And in terms of microplastics, when you understand the health effects that it's going to have on us and it is having on us, then you start to really listen because suddenly it's affecting you personally. It's not affecting the turtle that lives in the ocean 1,000 miles away. It's affecting you. And that is what we really wanted to look at. We wanted to show something that was visually striking, tonally dark, and more of a warning message. It's not guilt. It's not about guilt. I remember reading something about that and someone mentioned a comment, should we feel guilty? it's not really about that because at the end of the day, there's an onus on both the individual and the government or country and where you live and where you're from. As an individual, you can only do so much. You can try and reduce your plastic intake by having a water bottle or trying not to buy as much plastic items, trying to buy food locally and having clean filtered water supply. But the problem is that isn't available around the world, as much as we think. We live in a Western world, maybe it's different here, but if you look in a lot of different places, there isn't clean water. In most of the world, they don't have access to that. They don't have the infrastructure built up to support an environmental way of living. And so it's not about guilt, it's about education. It's a warning, but it's also, it's just really trying to have a small impact of trying to change the little things you can do as an individual to make a change. But yeah.
So, in terms of getting people on board, you said you got Anna Popplewell on board. I mean, that seemed like that was a no-brainer for her to do, that she seemed passionate about that. What
Yeah.
was your approach to her asking her to be involved?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah, in terms of how we approached Anna, we have a casting director, Stevie Davies. Whenever I write something, I always kind of picture someone in my mind in the role. And you know what it's like with film, it often is right place, right time. It doesn't often work out. But in this case, it really did because I'd pictured Anna in the role. I'd seen her in a play in Birmingham and then something in London, I remember and I really wanted to work with her. And I thought she was such an amazing actress, a great actor, and someone that would be great to work with. And I also just think she had this quality of her, this very kind of this very earthly, motherly tone of warmth, underneath her, and she's a very well experienced actor. She's a child actor that's grown up in that industry. But it was a no-brainer really. So what I tend to do is I write a personal letter to the actor, and that in within that letter I write about the character, who the character is to me, what the story is, how I'd like to collaborate with them. What is the meaning of this project? Why now? Why do I think she'd be great for this type of role? And I just, I wanted to make something personal to her, and then after she'd read that and she'd read the script, then she was like, let's get a phone call, let's do it, let's have a chat about it. And that's where she revealed she was pregnant. So, and then from then on, I think she only wanted to do it. She wanted to do it if I was okay to incorporate that into the story, of course. And of course I was, because it really enhanced her character, because what better way of representing Mother Nature than a pregnant woman, on the verge of giving life, and that is the epitome of Mother Nature. Really, is something, a being that holds life within and nurtures life, and so I think that just ended up, she obviously tapped into that during the filming, having that, being able to tap into that emotion because she was actually pregnant was something that you could really see in the performance. I mean, she was incredible. It was very easy to direct her, to be honest.
So can I just ask, because there was another film there that particularly at HollyShorts that particularly stood out, using body horror to talk about current issues. That was Pearls by Alistair Train.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
seen Pearls. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that was talking about fertility
Yeah.
and the issues that some people face. What is it about horror and satirical horror especially that makes it such a good platform for very important issues that need addressing?
It's a great question. I mean, honestly, I'd say for me, the point of these messages, I mean, when you've got something like fertility with Alistair's or something like plastic pollution for mine, a way of really gripping people's attention. Horror has a way of, I mean, it's really, horror gets a bad rep sometimes because people associate horror with jump scare or whatever that is, but it's not the case to me, really. To me, there's so many different forms of horror, and the idea behind it is that we really start to tap into allowing the audience to see something quite visually striking, which can often change their mind or shock them into a new type of information, but also allows you to write characters that can be quite vulnerable, in that horror setting, and therefore you can connect with them really well. I mean, so many horror films I see at the moment are just getting better and better because their characters are so complex and they hold so much emotional weight. I mean, recently watching Bring Her Back. I mean that I don't know if you've seen that film, but it's all about a grieving mother and the lengths that someone would go just to bring their daughter back. And, I mean, horror just has this amazing ability. And if you can attach that, this kind of genre filmmaking, if you can attach that to modern day problems, human issues and stories, you can actually tap into something that's quite surreal. And it's different, it's unique, and it's really striking. So I think it kind of takes away the limitations as well for me when you write, because suddenly there's no limit on what you can see, what you can do. And I think it's just a great platform to work with. So yeah, I mean, horror for me with an environmental message comes toe and hand in hand, because what's happening out there in the world is horrific. You know, that's also the case, that it's not far off horror naturally without even adding the extra stuff that's happening now. It is a pretty dire position that we're in. So, you can't really treat it necessarily. I mean, what we did with plastic surgery is we used a touch of comedy to kind of trick the audience at the beginning, which I know you touched
Mhm.
on. The idea was that we wanted to lure the audience in and trick, in a way, kind of trick you into a bit of self-assurance and feeling like this, okay, this is going to be this type of film, so that when it hits hard, then when it switches, it hits even harder, and you're thrown, and being thrown makes you really, it takes you back a bit, and you get to really understand the world that you're then going into. And it doesn't just shout at you. We kind of build up this tension, and then just the fact that it was, plastics and microplastics, they're in the human body. It felt like the kind of subject of body horror was the perfect element. And Substance had just come out. Actually, no, Substance came out after we'd made this film.
Yeah.
I think, but you can clearly see that body horror is having a big resurgence at the moment, and horror filmmakers are getting really graphic with their filmmaking, but they're doing it in a very clever, abstract ways, and making sure that the character comes first.
Now, this film is particular. I wouldn't say it's full on effects laden, but there's some stunning practical makeup effects in there because
Mhm.
as the problem gets worse, you obviously need to demonstrate just how bad that is. You've got someone coming in riddled with plastic Coke bottles. I mean, you don't point out that they're Coke, but it's obvious they are. So, um, how did you? So, what was involved in bringing those effects to life? Who did you hire, and how long did it all take?
Yeah. So we had an amazing prosthetics hair and makeup designer called Rebecca Wheeler. She's actually doing my next film. She's brilliant, absolutely incredible. She founded a company called the Prosthetics House in 2024, I think. And she was incredible. I mean, she had very little prep, very little time to prepare, but we had been talking for a while about these kind of plastic patients that we wanted to create. So we decided that we wanted 10 of them in the hospital ward, and out of these 10 patients, we wanted to kind of express the ways in which plastic transfers into the body. And then if you flip that on how it can seep out of the body, how would that look? So we started to look at, well, let's look at the air that we breathe, right? So the plastic that goes through the air goes into our lungs. So what could we do that's from the chest that could be something to do with the air pollution, something to do with that? So we started to look at some chest prosthetics. We did water throat. We did bottles. We did six-pack rings around the throat. We did straws in the throat. I looked at packaging for clothes and looked at bubble wrap. So then we looked at starting to create this kind of, because the texture of bubble wrap almost looks like a cell structure. So like skin. So we started to play with putting bubble wrap underneath the skin, and then if you would to cut and reveal, puzzle pieces of the skin, you'd see this bubble wrap underneath, as if the whole insides are now covered with bubble wrap. That was quite a powerful image to create. And then we looked at food packaging in the gut, in the stomach, coming out with someone. We looked at toothbrushes that were stuck underneath the skin and the bristles were piercing through. We looked at some horrific imagery, but we really wanted to make it striking. But we didn't want to film it so, still wanted it to be abstract, flashes, quick shots, to really heighten the horror. And then Anna's prosthetic was very different. She had a completely different prosthetic, which was kind of this gradual increase in plastic from within. So what starts with a small piece, a plastic cup section that she finds in her arm, showing that she's now infected, that she tries to pull on. When she then gets into the final room, we reveal all of these items that are washed up from the sea underneath her skin, basically piercing through from picnic forks and the kind of plastic lids to microplastic beads to food packaging, wrapping, PPE equipment. We even looked at for because I wanted to have that link in there to COVID of all the protective equipment that went into that. And it was just ironic that what we used to then protect ourselves would be dumped into the ocean, which effectively then goes back to harming ourselves anyway. So it's a kind of counterintuitive life cycle, which is a classic human way of dealing with a problem. But it's a really yeah, that was how, so yeah, Rebecca created that. In terms of the time scale and how long we filmed it, I mean, it's hard to believe, but actually we did most of the prosthetics all on one day. We filmed the main hospital ward, the girl with the throat gag, um, and another scene all on one day. And that was about 13 prosthetics that Rebecca did on that day. And that was our biggest day. I think we did something like 44 or 45 slates setups that day alone, within 10 hours. So it was tight. We had a lot to film. But yeah.
Well, yeah, you've certainly covered a lot, and it shows in the finished film. You mentioned the
Mm.
quick flashes in between each reveal of what the person is either having removed or is bringing up. I have to admit, I thought that was a really clever technique you used, those quick flashes, because on the one hand, you are showing something that's quite graphic and is not for everybody.
Mhm.
But by putting in the flashes, it certainly made me question, did I just see what I thought I saw? Like
Mm.
a can ring around someone's neck. Did I just see
Mhm.
bottles coming out? And it makes you want to actually look closer
Yeah.
to just verify that
it
that's what
gives
you
you
saw.
it gives you just enough of like a
Exactly.
interest, and then when it goes you're like, whoa, what was that? And you
Yeah.
know what, the inspiration for that was actually from the David Fincher, who I should have mentioned is another big inspiration of mine, who
Mhm.
did the film Seven, of course, which I'm sure you've seen. I've seen it
Yes.
probably about 100
Yes, I
times.
know Seven very well.
But that in the film, that has probably one of the most horrific images I've ever seen on camera. Just purely how it's filmed and just which is the lust device, which I think he shows in one shot on a
Oof.
Polaroid in literally 1 second. It's a
Hmm.
bam and gone.
Yes.
And it's really scary. And even actually when they had the whole in the box scene, if you pause it, there's a frame over the box where we then see Gwyneth Paltrow's face looking up, which would have been her on the bed with Kevin Spacey.
Mhm.
It's these he utilizes flashes really, really well, which is very, very clever. So we took a lot of inspiration from that.
Mm. And it does work well because horror, through not intentionally, but horror can have this effect of making people look away because
Yeah,
oh that's too graphic, that's too horrible. But the flashes, like I said, they draw you in to look closer because you need to check that you saw what you saw. And I suppose
mm,
with an important message that's carried in plastic surgery, you need people paying attention, not looking away because it's too. I
yeah,
mean, that's what we do in real life. We don't want to talk about these issues. So it's a really good way of pulling the audience in and making them pay attention to what you're trying to tell them in the story. So
yeah.
I really did pick up on that, and I thought you used that really well. This is
Mm.
good technique. So in terms of the film's message and reception, then, first off, Have you screened this to environmental groups and scientists and experts who are studying and trying to warn us about this
Yeah.
thing going on? Uh, and if so, what was their reaction?
Oh, I mean, the reaction has been incredible. Just in terms of the people that have seen it, the different charities that we were trying to work with and have had a relationship with, like Kids Against Plastic, for our seas health. We've done quite a few environmental film festivals like Cine Eco in Portugal, which if you haven't been, I'd really recommend. It was one of my favorite festivals so far of the season, and that's in a town called Ceia, which is probably 2 hours inland of Lisbon, and it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, environmental film festival in Europe. It was founded in the early 90s. And for a festival to found as being a completely environmental festival at that time was very rare that you ever had that around the world. And they focus predominantly on environmental, and they're now one of the biggest ones in Europe. And they even premiered Flow, which won the Academy Award for animation. And we went and we won the best international short film with plastic surgery there in October, I think, last year. And they were phenomenal. It was, yeah, absolutely incredible festival. As I said, they were amazing. We saw some incredible films there, and they actually what was really cool, and we didn't know about this, but when we had the screening of the film, they invited two or three schools to the screening. So kids around the age of 11 up to 18 watched the film. And I was not expecting that. And their reaction was incredible because I really wasn't sure what kids would think of it, or, you know, even being able to show it to an age group that young, being, 11-year-olds as well. But the reaction was amazing. A lot of the reaction was, should I be worried for my parents? What do I need to do myself? Is there a way that we can start to avoid plastics, like by having, they were avidly really wanting to make a change
Mhm.
and learn and understand more about the issue. And it was interesting that one of the first things that came to their minds was, should I be worried for my family and the plastic intake that they have? What can we be doing as a family? And these are questions coming from 11, 12-year-olds.
That's
And I
incredible.
look back to when I was 11 or 12, and I was definitely not thinking about plastic pollution. I don't, so it's amazing to see
Mhm.
how that's evolved. And what's great about this community in Saya is because the festival's been there now for 35, 40 years, it's become a part of their community, a part of their culture. And kids have been going to that festival as part of their schooling every year since, so what it breeds is essentially very environmentally aware children, who then go off into the world being very environmentally conscious. And that's the power of environmental filmmaking is that, if you're able to change the minds and make the younger generation very knowledgeable and understand in a way that suits them, which is quick, short films. It's very attention gauging. The battle with attention spans of younger generation. You need something that's quite fast and punchy that gets your point across quickly. And this is what we tried to do with plastic surgery. That's exactly what we tried to do. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the reaction that we've had immediately.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I'm going to have to read about Cine Echo. That sounds fantastic, and I
Yeah,
think at
please
this
do.
time it's just what's needed.
Yeah.
Um, so, so moving forward with the film, then, what's the next step in driving and promoting the film? Because it's gone to festivals. We mentioned Cine Echo. We mentioned HollyShorts as well, which is a big sort of uh, multi-genre film festival for short films. What's next in terms of driving the message to where it needs to go, really, which is those people who hold the purse strings and the power? Are there any plans to get the film screened in front of the people who can
Mm.
truly make a difference?
Yeah, yeah. So we're trying to work with some charities at the moment, Surfers Against Sewage, Greenpeace, to try and get the film out there to a bigger audience within that sphere of activism and general change. In fact, working with Kids Against Plastic, we're hoping to do something with them, very soon, which would be around the education of children at schools. So being able to show this film to a certain age group of kids from 12 plus, 12 onwards, and educate kids about that issue as well. And then, in terms of the next steps, we're about halfway through the festival season currently. We're off to Glasgow Film Festival this weekend, which is we're part Plastic Surgery is part of the Fright Fest showcase.
Okay.
So we're really, really excited about that on the Saturday. And then we're also at CineQuest next week, I believe, or the week after. And then we got, Fastnet coming up. We've got two more environmental film festivals, Sustain, and then the environmental festival in the nation's capital in DC. And then they've got Cleveland as well, RAP Film Festival in Finsbury. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of big stuff coming up. We've got quite a packed schedule within the incoming months because everything's starting to pick up again
Mhm.
after the kind of quieter January, February. And so, yeah, I mean, we're just plowing through that festival circuit at the moment, getting the film out globally to as many people as we can. I think we're either close to or just over 40 festivals now with the film.
Wow.
And again, that was always the goal to get it to as many
Mhm.
festivals that we could globally, to spread its message and get as many people to watch it as possible. And hopefully, if one person makes a general change after seeing the film, then we would have succeeded in our mission. So that was always the goal is, just to heighten people's understanding of the issue, and maybe one day someone would change one little thing of their
Mhm.
personal life.
As you were making the film, given the incredible reception it's gotten at film festivals and by film journalists like myself, when you were making the film, did you anticipate that this is something that would almost take on a life of its own and would carry through the festivals, through the people who've seen it with such incredible feedback? Did you get any sense at all that it would have the impact it's having?
No, not really. I mean, you really don't think about that when you're writing these and making these films because,
Mhm.
the attention is so much on, creating something which hasn't been yet. And, I was watching this podcast recently and that I think it was Greta Gerwig who was saying, these films have no right to exist without the filmmakers that make them, without the crew, the director, the writer, the producers, the DOP, the costume designer, the makeup designer, the amount of people that make this happen. And because of you know how hard it is to make a film in the current market. It's everything is expensive, everything is against you, funding is limited. Independent filmmaking is tough. So I think the last thing I was thinking about really was how the film would be received. I was just hoping that we'd make it. Was probably the main thing, because I mean, Ramon, I mean, I'm sure you get this all the time, but it's such a struggle when you're trying to make a short film, and so many things can go wrong because you don't have the money and the budget and the time necessarily. So you are limited in that sense, to the tools at your disposal. But that's where you've just got to write and you've got to create on the basis that you have no money, and you've got to make it work. And that's how these films evolve. And so, no, I really don't think I've ever thought about its reception, but obviously it's been such a great journey and a great, it's so great for me to just join these net film festivals and networking and meeting like-minded people, and meeting other directors and writers, and it's a great, journey to go on in the festival circuit. If you've got a film that gets into them and gives you the opportunity to go around the world and see these festivals and see people's reactions and see people's comments, yeah, it's a blessing really to be able to do that.
I'll bet. So last question then. Now, this is your first film as a writer director,
Mhm.
and you've got a very fascinating, recognizable but fascinating, powerful narrative style. Are your plans moving forward then to continue along these lines to take important issues and raise them through your films,
Yeah.
or are you looking to also go into movie making, if you like?
So I think in terms of how I like to write and a lot of the films I'm writing at the moment, they're all character journeys, they're character stories at the heart, but they all have a bigger message, be it social, human issues, an issue with the planet, environmentally, a human issue within ourselves. So the next project we're doing is called The Act of Learning, which is a film, it's a film about undiagnosed dyslexia. So that's all about my, personal experience with dyslexia, growing up with that, the learning support that is out there, and the teacher that helped me and that basically allowed me to read and write. And without her, I would never have been able to be in the position I am today without that teaching and that support. So it's about self-belief, it's about mentorship. It's a lot more lighthearted maybe than plastic surgery. There's no body horror this time, but this is a deeper personal story to me, which looks at a coming of age story about undiagnosed dyslexia, but at the heart there is still genre there, which is the fantasy adventure side. So we're tapping into the fantasy realm of Charlie, who's the lead in this story's mind, and where does that take him, and how does he overcome these obstacles by going into his imagination and using that as a form of superpower, really. And that's kind of where this next project is going. Then I'm also writing different stories, again, that's linked to the environment. I'm doing an environmental animation thriller, which is really exciting, called Haven, and another short as well, which is more of a war film. But these are all in the lead up this year to then hopefully have the feature film in ready to go by next year, to really press that forward.
Well, that's it for this episode of Cine Bijou. Thanks for joining us as we pulled open the curtain once more, revealing the world of independent film and the creative mavericks who make it all happen. You can find this and every other episode on Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, and of course, Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, why not leave a star review or drop us a comment? It's a small gesture, sure, but it means the world to us, and it helps fellow film fans find their way to us too. Make sure you also follow us on all the usual social media haunts: Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky. And for reviews, features and more, why not pay us a visit at our website www.cine-bijou.co.uk. And if you are spreading the word, please don't forget to use the hashtag #SupportIndieFilm, because every share helps keep great stories in the spotlight. Until next time, keep listening, keep discovering, and as ever, let's keep that indie flame burning.